Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and as always, we have a bunch of really good questions from inside the Red Raiders subscribers. So I'm going to dive right into them. First one comes from Tech Freak, who asks, why do people think the American Conference would absorb the remaining Big 12 teams? Wouldn't it be the other way around? Well, I think I understand what you're saying in terms of the Big 12 being, the established power conference or Power 5 conference. So when they absorb the American and it be the big whatever, big 20 or however many schools it is, I think that's certainly a possibility. I think some people think some Big 12 teams would join the AAC because the Big 12 is the conference perceived to be the least stable. The AAC, though not a Power 5 conference, seems to be more stable than the Big 12 in terms of, there aren't as many defections all the time, and just everything with the Big 12 has just seemed so unstable for a long time. I wouldn't say since its inception, but definitely since, the last round of realignment. Once like A&M, once the A&Ms and Nebraskas and Colorado's left, it's pretty much been on playing on thin ice for a long time, I guess would say how the Big 12 has been. So I think that's why that perception's out there. Now, I think anyone who says they know for sure the way it would shake out is probably lying or overconfident. But I could see either one of those happening if some other possibilities or options for Texas Tech don't go the way I think many of us want it to. So I just feel like it could go either way. But I totally get the question, and I get both sides of it. All right, next question comes from Mr. Mustafa Man, who says, what's your sixth sense regarding this football team? It says, you've been to practices and such. Is there a different feel to it, or is it just more the same? No, it's definitely not more the same. I'm not the only one to say that. I know, like, for example, Double T Farmers notice it. I would say the biggest thing is that, like, it's just a serious team because there's so many veterans, not just the super seniors, but they have had some continuity. Now, I know they obviously replaced the offensive coordinator, David Yost, with Sonny Cumbie, but for the most part, this staff has been together for a long time. There's been some stability. There's been some stability on defense, which has been nice. So, guys have been able to develop. I know they brought in a bunch of newcomers, but those newcomers are veterans, and then you augment them with guys who have been around for a while. They know the deal, and you have a veteran team that's, and I think the thing is that everyone knows the score. Everyone knows, there's pressure. I think there's pressure every year, but they know that this coaching staff needs to win, and I just feel like it's just kind of a serious nature. And there's definitely, accountability gets thrown out there a lot, but there is some accountability with this program. I do feel like there's more discipline. For example, like even in practices, every team has refs out there, but I just remember, and I don't want to dog the previous regime. You asked how it's different, so I'm going to tell you this is one difference I've noticed is that, for example, say if the offense had like a little like just a split-second false start or something like that happened, if the ref even threw a flag, which sometimes he didn't, they wouldn't really stop and talk about it, which was always found curious. It's rare now that there's a false start. Like I think I've seen one in all these practices I've been at. And when it happened, it was like a volcano of screaming and snot and blah, 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 people just going crazy about it. Like you just don't do that. They just, I've always thought this is pre-snap and post-snap penalties is coaching, in the play, come on, stuff happens. Sometimes it really is talent. Like guys are trying to overcome being overmatched. And that's just, that's part of competition. And I think that's the way I've always been taught football is you can accept that. But the pre and post-snap penalties, that's coaching. If a coach that allows that to happen isn't doing his job, part of his job. So I think, that kind of discipline, the way they're trying to instill a physicality, that's different. We'll see if it works, but the seriousness, the accountability, and the trying to establish a physical nature, That's different. Those are the differences I've noticed. Not to mention just the overall team depth is better. Next question comes from Architect, who asks, does Taylor Shough look to be as good as advertised? And is he the best QB Tech has had in camp since Mahomes? Well, I think he is the most talented quarterback Texas Tech has had since Mahomes. Some people will point to Nick Shimonek. I feel like Shimonek was like an average quarterback in terms of talent, you know? I mean, he had some intangibles that I really liked about him, but ultimately, you know, especially coming after Mahomes, like sheesh. But he was okay. So since then, in terms of talent, yeah. You know, Jed Duffy had some talent, but he didn't put any kind of effort into it. And I wouldn't say it was like overwhelming talent. He had some talent. But that's been about it. All these quarterbacks, really. I mean, specifically Shough, Donovan Smith, and Baron Morton. Now, I like Henry Columbia. I like what I've seen from him. But here's the thing about Taylor Shough. He has a big arm. He's very strong arm. He throws a beautiful deep ball. I mean, we were just marveling the other day of just consistently him throwing these 50-yard bombs that were hitting these fast receivers in stride. I mean, these guys were trying to just burn down the field. I mean, he was just laying it in their hands, you know. But so does Donovan Smith, and so does Baron Morton, and even Henry Columbia threw some nice deep balls. So I think you got to be careful about what you take away from training camp, because these guys aren't getting hit. Once the fear gets put into the equation, which is a very real thing, it changes guys. Some dudes step up. Like Mahomes is notorious. Like, I mean, he had some good moments in practice where he'd show off his arm, but ultimately it was like he was bored, you know? I don't know if he'd ever admit that, but, you know, that was kind of the deal. And then, of course, when the lights came on, I mean, he became the maestro, you know? So, just freaking nature. And you see that with a lot of guys. Like Sonny Cumbie, the offensive coordinator, said earlier this week that you can see that with Baron Morton, that he doesn't practice all that great, but boy, that first scrimmage, he looked amazing. So I think that some of that's maturity. And Shough is older, but he's still, I mean, he's only been started for 1 year. It wasn't even a full season last year. He's still relatively young. So, while I like him, there's definitely some things to polish, and I think he's going to go through some growing pains, but I still think he's going to be a huge improvement over what we've seen in the last couple of years. Like, there's very little doubt in my mind in terms of if he's the real deal. Now, he's been anointed the savior. That's a lot of pressure, so the first bad game he has, everyone's going to, you know, pile on him, but that's just the nature of playing quarterback. But no, I do believe his talent is a real deal, and so do a lot of NFL scouts who have been at training camp, in large part to see him, but also guys like Easy and Sir Roderick as well. Speaking of running backs, Texan 44 asks, choose your backfield for the 2021 season. You could have DeAndre Washington, Trey King, Kenny Williams, and Tayshawn Henry, or Sir Roderick Thompson, this is the current one, Sir Roderick Thompson, who I just mentioned, Chad Townsend, Xavier White, and Taj Brooks. That is really tough because there's no doubt in my mind the best running back of that group is DeAndre Washington. And he was such a bell cow running back who did everything. Like, he does everything, every part of playing running back than every other running back on this list. Okay? He's like, Mahomes even said how much Dre in 2015 helped point out, you know, okay, this is the blitz coming, this is the coverage you're going to see like pre-snap. Which is very rare to find a running back be that advanced, where he just knew what was coming. But he's a great runner. He almost always made the first guy miss or bounce off of him. Very good receiver, and I would say definitely the best pass protector, though. Taj Brooks is pretty good. So, I mean, if I had to just choose all four, like, the best depth is definitely this year. But Dre was a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher. He was a first-team All-Big 12 performer on a Cliff Kingsbury coached air raid team that had Pat Mahomes on it. So that tells you just how good he was. I mean, he was a very, very good college running back. So I think I got to take the first group just because Dre. I mean, you switch all of them around, whichever one DeAndre Washington was on. And that's before I even get to leadership. Too, which, you know, I've talked about a lot, whether it be him going and talking to guys at the training room and telling them you better get right before you get left. After, you know, of course, he came back from that really bad ACL injury early in his career to be an all Big 12 performer NFL player. And then, him and LaRaven doing that players only deal where they challenge everybody, and in the locker room to step up. And then they went out and destroyed Kansas State on senior day. So DeAndre Washington brought a lot to the table. He's one of my favorite guys I've ever covered, period, any team, certainly at Texas Tech. So I got to take that first group just because of him. All right. Murdow Coalition says, I guess you may hear this every week, but are you holding fast to your previous feelings that Tech will end up in the Pac-12? Or has new information surfaced that may have changed that opinion? Yeah, I believe the Pac-12 commissioner just recently came out and said that they're going to make a decision on expansion in the next 2 weeks, which I thought, I don't know why he said that. But even if that's the case, why announce that? But that's interesting. I don't know if that's probably not good news for Texas Tech, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I'm not going to act like I'm talking to the president and the chancellor and Kirby Hocutt every day. I'm not. So I don't have any new information from them. But I don't have any information for sure saying no, other than, I don't think that the Pac-12 deciding the next 2 weeks is probably a good thing. So, to say I feel strongly that Tech's going to Pac-12, that was my feeling. I haven't heard anything really to change that, but who knows what's going to happen with realignment? Really is my answer. Joe Leaphorn says, please brainstorm some scenarios where men's hoops could remain a player in the national scene if Tech fails to land within a Power 4 or 5 conference. Yeah, this one's not difficult for me at all. There's a lot of mid-majors that are powerhouse, or not a lot, but I mean, it's very possible to be a national powerhouse. Much easier, obviously, in basketball than football without being in a Power 5 conference. I mean, just look at the last Final Four. 2 of the teams in the Final Four were from mid-majors, or not, at least not power conferences. You had Houston and Gonzaga. So, and before Baylor pushed Gonzaga around in the national championship, there was a lot of people, even on our board, saying Gonzaga was the best college basketball team of all time. I certainly wasn't one of those, but I thought, because I do believe there is something to needing to be tested. Gonzaga coasted through, pretty much uncontested. Well, they were uncontested. So I thought when they played a top tier Big 12 team or something like that, that they would struggle, that they would not be able to recover or adjust to the level of competition in time. And I think Baylor showed that. Now, maybe Baylor was just that good and they were underestimated compared to Gonzaga, and I do think Baylor was very, obviously they were great, but can you be a mid-major or non-Power 5 conference program and be a national power? Absolutely. I don't think it would be difficult. They're already set up to with the facilities and all that stuff's in place. They have some history, close to fertile recruiting grounds. So this will be a big bridge year, obviously, with Coach Adams. So I think they need to get in the tournament, have a good year, and then just keep building, keep recruiting, keep building, and no matter what conference they land in, I think they'll have a very good program as long as they keep hiring good coaches. Now, will not being in the Big 12 or the Big 12 not being perhaps seen as what it was, especially if Kansas leaves, will that hurt recruiting? Probably. Yeah, I mean, sure. But, I just don't feel like it's this black or white thing. Oh, you're not in the Big 12, so you can't recruit. It'll be different. But certainly still possible to be a national power and not be in a Power 5 conference. Ram44 says, serious question, what school in any conference would you like to see Tech form a rivalry with? One that would be compelling, competitive, fun for the fans, and hype for the players. Well, this may sound obvious, and I hate for that to be just obvious, but the Arizona State and Arizona matchups just make so much sense. I mean, it's regional. I think they can be competitive in the major sports in terms of Tech and those two schools, and basketball, football, baseball. I think it would just be fun. I mean, Arizona Tech basketball, how much fun does that sound? Especially if they could come on. I know they've been kind of down for them relatively recently, but great program. And Arizona State is just fun. Going out to the Arizona State game was a lot of fun until they actually kicked off and Tech got their butts kicked. But there was just a lot of fun to that, and I just think there's a lot of things that make sense with with Tech playing those two schools or developing a rivalry. I think especially the Arizona State and Tech fan bases have a lot of similarities. Party schools and all that. So I just think it would be fun to talk smack with those guys. I enjoyed, like, even though that game in Tempe was terrible, it was, in terms of Tech's perspective, and it was really hot. Sheesh. But it was still, like, I respected the smack talk I heard from Arizona State fans, as opposed to, like, say, like Arkansas just seemed obnoxious. Some other schools, so that's who I pick. I like those schools. It makes a lot of sense. It's regional. They have good programs. I think it would be competitive. They split with Arizona State in the home and away, or home and home. And then I think they probably would have split with Arizona. They didn't get a chance to play last year, but I think Tech probably would have won that game, but we'll never know. So, anyways, that's who I pick. Tornado Watch wants to know, what conference or conferences would Tadlock and the baseball team best be suited for? Now, to me, I think it would be the SEC. I think for all the talk about SEC football, and rightfully so in some cases, they're really top heavy. Like 3 or 4 schools are like, okay, they're really good. Obviously Alabama and LSU and Georgia and Florida, but then it's kind of like they have some middling teams after that for the year in and year out. Now baseball, man, they are stacked. So I know Tech struggled in that season opening tournament against 3 SEC schools. They went over, but I mean, just in 2019, the last full season before this previous one, I mean, you beat Arkansas in the World Series. You swept Kentucky there. So I just feel like Tim Tadlock's not scared to play anybody anywhere. He's shown that over the years. Tech is truly an elite baseball program. I think it is. That's the best baseball conference in the country. And that would be a lot of fun, like week in and week out, to see who Tech plays and just the battles and everything. I think that would be the best fit. The final question comes from Captain Popsicle, who wants to know about Dave Scholes, the strength and conditioning coach. He says, is he the real deal? He says, we were all hyped about the last coach, Rusty Witt, because he was a, former, he was a Green Beret. He said, but they saw little results from his crazy training techniques. Any insight into the difference between the strength and conditioning program between the two, and then now to see such impressive gains? Yeah. So here's a couple of things I've heard, and whether it be from Broderick Washington, who obviously knew the difference between the two, or guys today who I talked to. Here's 2 main differences I see between Dave Scholes, and I even asked Chadarius Townsend between, like Alabama has every advantage, the spare no expense, obviously also on strength and conditioning. So I asked him the difference, and he said what Dave Scholes is really good at is like, all right, talking to you, finding out your story, what your lifestyle is, and then basically negating the negative of what you do. Like whether if you so maybe you're not working out a certain body part the way you should, or maybe you're not eating right, or maybe you're not getting enough sleep, whatever it may be. He, in terms of wherever your weakness is in your lifestyle, Scholes will identify it and attack it and change that for you. And that's where you see these big gains for these guys, because they're turning a negative into a positive. And a lot of times that's all it takes, a little tweak to the diet. I remember talking with Zach Thomas when we had him on the Rocket pregame one time, and he just said, everybody talked about, he was too small, too slow, and all that. But he said, like, if you have the will, and oh, by the way, one thing people may not know about Zach Thomas was just how strong he was, just naturally. Some people are just naturally strong, no matter how big they are. So that's one thing I want to mention, and how smart. And part of that intelligence was his preparation and the way he ate, the way he slept. He slept a lot. He said, a ton, and that was a big part of it. And then, of course, all the other stuff in terms of taking care of your body and lifting and everything. Scholes really attacks all those facets of weight gain, weight training, nutrition. And then the second part of it is, and this is what I heard a lot from, Jordan Brooks told me that he really liked about him, is the way they do so many different kinds of stretching and before they work out or practice or anything, how much time they spend on. I would equate it to yoga. I don't know what the proper term is, what I'm sure they have some technical term for it, but basically the way they stretch out their muscles and tendons in a effort to negate injuries, to really cut back on shoulder injuries, knee injuries, stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't always work. It's football, people are going to get hurt, but that's one thing that like the veterans Jordan Brooks and Broderick Washington told me they really appreciated. But that, Washington straight up told me that he almost wished he had another year at Tech so he could spend with Shough because he believed he would improve his draft stock, significantly. So, that's pretty hardcore, man. To have those kind of guys, NFL players, veterans that have been around, and then the new guys. You said you see all the gains. I mean, you just go down the list of all these guys. I mentioned Shadarius Townsend. He's put on 20 pounds of good weight. Krishan Merriweather, 15. He looks amazing. Landon Peterson, 65 pounds of good weight in 3 years. I mean, that's amazing. He went from 250 to 315. So, yeah, the proof is there. I think he is a good strength and conditioning coach. But I understand the crowd that's like, well, we talk about the strength and conditioning coach no matter who he is every offseason. So that's part of it too. So we'll see how they do on the field. That's where we always get back to, right? Is what the end results are going to be. So I like Shough. I think he's a good one. I definitely think he's helping develop these players. It makes sense. And man, I'm ready for the season. I'm ready for the scrimmage coming up tomorrow, and I'm ready for the season to kick off here in a couple of weeks. So with that, I want to thank you all for your great questions. Thanks for watching, and until next time.